When Emily first heard her baby cry in the hospital room, she thought the world had folded itself neatly into one beautiful tiny sound. She was exhausted, her body trembling from the labor she had just endured, but the sight of her newborn in the nurse's arms filled every tired muscle with something close to electricity. Her husband, Daniel, stood beside her with tears streaking down his cheeks, repeating the same words over and over as though they were prayers. "She's here, Emily. She's here." The layette was already prepared back at home, folded with precision weeks earlier. Little cotton onesies, pastel blankets, a crib placed in the corner of the nursery. Everything had been bought with meticulous lists and endless trips to the baby store. Every detail had been imagined for one child. But fate, as they were about to learn, had other plans, the kind that no checklist or parenting guide could anticipate. It was only when the doctor's voice cut through the haze of that first moment that the room shifted. "Emily," she said gently, "there's another heartbeat. We need to prepare." The silence that followed was thunderous. Daniel's mouth fell open. Emily blinked in disbelief, still clutching the tiny bundle against her chest. Another heartbeat? Another baby? She had carried a child for 9 months, counting kicks, measuring her belly, listening to the steady thump of life at every appointment. And yet, somehow, nestled in shadows and silence, a second child had hidden from every ultrasound and every expectation. Minutes later, another cry split the air, this one louder, sharper, as if the newborn had arrived determined to announce her existence to the world. She was smaller than her sister, fragile in appearance, but her voice carried a force that startled everyone in the room. Daniel could barely find the words. "A miracle," he whispered hoarsely, and the name stuck before they even signed the birth certificate. Their second daughter would forever be known as Miracle. The first days at home blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and improvised solutions. Emily had always imagined herself gently rocking one baby to sleep in the carefully prepared crib, humming lullabies into the quiet dark. Instead, she and Daniel found themselves holding 2 squirming newborns, juggling bottles and diapers with the clumsy panic of people who had trained for a marathon, but suddenly discovered they were running 2 at once. The layette that once felt abundant now seemed laughably insufficient. One crib became a battleground of compromise, with rolled towels creating makeshift dividers to keep the sisters safe. The tiny stash of newborn clothes rotated between laundry loads at a dizzying pace. Emily laughed once, delirious from lack of sleep, when she realized that the single diaper bag they had packed for trips outside now looked like a child's toy compared to what they needed. Neighbors, friends, and relatives began to trickle into the house, their arms full of casseroles, packages of diapers, and sympathetic smiles. Each visitor asked the same question: "How are you managing?" And each time, Daniel and Emily exchanged glances that spoke more honestly than words. They were improvising. They were surviving. At 3 in the morning, when both babies cried in unison, Emily sometimes wondered if she was strong enough for this. Her body still ached from childbirth, her mind clouded with fatigue, yet she moved through the nursery like someone who had discovered a new kind of stamina born only from necessity. Daniel would pace the floor with Miracle in his arms, whispering reassurances he wasn't sure he believed, while Emily rocked her sister Grace against her shoulder. The house felt alive with sound, the walls absorbing the cries and lullabies like secrets whispered in the dark. As the weeks passed, their new rhythm began to take shape, though it was far from graceful. Emily learned that one child could be soothed with gentle humming while the other required motion, constant rocking, bouncing, or pacing. Daniel mastered the art of holding a bottle in one hand while burping a baby in the other, a feat he would later describe with pride, like a soldier recalling survival tactics. There were moments of comedy, too, nights when they accidentally mixed up which baby was in which bassinet, mornings when they discovered one infant sock in the coffee pot, or a pacifier floating in Emily's tea. Each mistake reminded them that they were still learning, that parenthood was less about flawless execution and more about stumbling forward with love. But beneath the exhaustion lay a quiet awe. Watching Grace and Miracle sleep side by side in the crib, their tiny fists curled and their breaths rising in unison, Emily felt as though she was witnessing something sacred. Two lives had grown within her, one known, one hidden, both now reshaping every dream she had carried into motherhood. Naming the second child Miracle was more than a spur-of-the-moment decision. It became a story retold in every conversation with relatives and strangers alike. She wasn't expected. She wasn't planned. She arrived without warning, and she is our miracle. The name carried weight, a reminder that life was capable of surprising them with gifts too extraordinary to predict. Months melted into each other, bringing with them new challenges and triumphs. Crawling turned into toddling, and the house once again transformed. The single crib had long been replaced by two, their wooden frames standing side by side like twin anchors in the nursery. Emily sometimes stood at the doorway, marveling at how a room meant for one had stretched itself to hold two. Grace grew into the steadier, more cautious child, often watching her sister's antics with wide eyes before daring to try them herself. Miracle, true to her name, was bold from the start, pulling herself up on furniture before her balance could support her, laughing when she toppled over as though the floor had been part of the game. Together, they were a study in contrast, one deliberate, one daring, yet inseparable in their bond. Daniel, once overwhelmed by the double demand, discovered unexpected joy in the chaos. He recorded videos of their laughter, their first attempts at words, the way they reached for each other's hands in sleep. "We thought we were preparing for one life," he told Emily one night, watching the twins on the baby monitor. "But somehow we were being prepared for two. Maybe we just didn't know it yet." Not everything was easy. Financial strain crept into their lives as quickly as the babies had. Two mouths meant double the formula, double the diapers, and eventually, double the daycare costs. Emily returned to work earlier than planned. Her heart aching each morning, she left the girls in someone else's care. Daniel picked up extra hours, often coming home too tired to speak, though he always bent down to kiss each child goodnight, no matter how late it was. And yet, even in the hardest seasons, they carried the knowledge that their story was extraordinary. Friends marveled at it, strangers leaned in to hear it, and Emily herself sometimes replayed it in her mind like a movie she couldn't believe she had starred in. She remembered the shock on the doctor's face, the laughter of the nurses, the weight of two warm bodies placed in her arms when she had expected only one. Years later, the girls themselves would demand the story nightly, curled up in bed with wide eyes. Grace would ask, "Was I the first one, Mama?" And Miracle would giggle, proud of her dramatic entrance. Emily told it every time with the same cadence, never skipping a detail, always ending with the same words. "And that's why we named you Miracle. Because you came without warning, but you were exactly what we needed." By then, the cribs were gone, replaced by twin beds covered in mismatched blankets. The nursery had become a shared kingdom of toys, books, and scattered socks. But the memory of those first days lingered like an invisible thread, binding the family to the moment when everything had changed in an instant. From one crib to two, from one dream to two, from one heartbeat to two, their lives had doubled without warning. And though exhaustion, worry, and hardship had walked hand in hand with the joy, Emily and Daniel knew they had been given something extraordinary. Not just daughters, but a story that reminded them daily of life's unpredictability and its astonishing generosity.